Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Ding, 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 ding. Let me fly away with you. Ding, 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 ding. For my love is like the wind. Ding, 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 ding. And wild is the wind. Oh, wild is the wind. You touch me. Ding, ding, ding. I hear the sound of mandolins. You kiss me, dang, 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 dang. With your kiss, my life begins. Oh, you're spring to me. All frogs to me. Don't you know you're frog itself?
Hi, and welcome to the CM Kosemen Frog Extravaganza.
Welcome again to part 2 of the CM Kosemen Frog Extravaganza, where we try to review and classify almost every kind of frog alive in the world. And boy, what a Herculean, what a Sisyphean task it is proving to be, because there are a lot of frogs out there. This is part 2 of a long series. I don't know how many parts it's going to end up being, because there's all 650 slides together. In the first part, we saw the two main groups, Archaeobatrachia and Mesobatrachia, but now we're going to see Neobatrachia, which contains almost every other group of frog ever known, and hell, it's a long, big group. Anyways, before beginning, please watch part 1 if you haven't watched it already. And also, please consider supporting me on patreon.com/cmkosemen. Also, please consider supporting Ater Prometheum for their contribution to the intro segment at buymeacoffee.com/prometheums. Also, another trick in Kosemen land is to play this video at twice or 1.5 times the volume, the speed, because it makes me sound like a cooler person. Okay, so we saw all these, the Mesobatrachian frogs, the Pipa frogs, the experimental frogs. Thank you, honey. My wife just brought me hot chocolate. And now we are at Neobatrachia. This group of frogs was named for Neo of the Matrix trilogy. No, I'm just kidding. It means new frogs, which contains almost all the big modern groups of frogs, and it has several subdivisions within itself. So without further ado, let's go, because time is blood in this world. If it's not blood, at least it's gigabytes in my world, because I'm recording on a very old computer and I never know when this thing might crash. Okay, Neobatrachia, let's go with the Helophrenoidea subgroup of the Neobatrachians. And these are basically archaic looking but still kind of modern, flattish tree frog like things, mostly found in Africa, mostly in South Africa actually. They inhabit mountain streams, and in fact this particular species, Helophrene rosaei, is native to Table Mountain in South Africa. In this beautiful photograph by Tyrone Pink, who I introduced in the first part of this video, he's an amazing herpetology photographer. He has captured the kind of disc-shaped sucker tadpoles of these frogs that just live in stony mountain streams, and they have just so specially adapted to this role. You know, the water flows over them, they suck the stone, hang in there, and mature into this thing, Heliophrine rosei. And in this group, you also have Heliophrine huitai, which has more marbled, striking color patterns. This photo by Richard Boycott right here. And that's that. Seems easy at first, doesn't it? Just you wait. From Heliophrinoidea, we move to Australobatrachia, which is actually a big clade of southern hemisphere toads, which includes the Chilean giant weird prehistoric Calyptocephalus toads. Or these are not toads per se, they're just strange, archaic looking but modern frogs. Calyptocephala geyi from the Calyptocephalidae group of the Australobatrachian, Neobatrachian frogs. Get used to this classification scheme up here, because you know we're gonna move through their ranks, and sometimes subfamilies have subgroups, and it's all one branching cladistic poem. In this group, we also have Telmota buffo, which is known from a very few sightings and records. In my research, I uncovered that only a single adult was found in extensive fieldwork operation in the 10 years between 1992 and 2002. Anyways, that was that. Seems simple, doesn't it? But no. We move to the Myobatrachoidea subgroup, or sometimes it's classified as a separate family group. I don't know. I'm just going to call everything groups now, but you get the idea. In this group, you have many families, including Limnodynastidae, the Australian, well, what can I say? The Australian limnodynastid frogs, basically. And they are known from this species, Adelotus brevis, also recognizable for its fang-like bony growths in its lower jaws. These are not proper teeth, they're just pieces of bone that help this thing capture its prey. And here you can see it's being forced to expose them. Also in this group, you have, like, these are mostly Australian frogs, by the way. You have like sort of regular looking Australian frogs such as Limnodynastes peronii. I was very lucky because when I traveled to Australia in 2015, I saw some of these in a local park, and they look just like normal pond frogs or normal frogs, but they actually belong to a basal and divergent line of the entire modern frog mega family. And these frogs are also known for their foam nests, which they kind of bubble up with body secretions, and they lay their eggs in them. And there are also other frogs that make foam nests, but you won't be seeing them in this part. They're far off in the family tree. In this group, you also have these like arid land frogs, basically, represented by Neobatrachus aquilonius, and this is just the best frog. I mean, as you can see, they're getting it on, they're mating. The male has the archaic look that every male in every species and every clade has, including humans, and so does the female, you know. Now, if you got a crush somewhere, I have a mission for you. Start recording this part of the screen, okay? This could be us, but you playing. I mean, this is just the most heartfelt expression of love and caring and ecstasy. There's just, look at this. I mean, it's just a meme right there. Also in this group is the famous crucifix toad, not Adan Bennetti of the Australian deserts, here also represented in the stamp. Apparently, the early colonizers of Australia thought that these markings look like a sort of crucifix, but they actually look more like Aboriginal art. I mean, it doesn't look like a crucifix because it's got two heads and two wings and one tail. It doesn't look like a cross at all. But this frog is also spectacular. I mean, just look at this face and look at this gulby kind of sack. It's just a little friendly sack. These frogs live in arid or semi-desert lands and burst from underneath the sand to capture unwary prey. They spend a lot of time in burrows, basically, And when it rains, they go out and start having their good time. In this group, you also have the Myobatrachidae family, which is represented here by Antistia alba, this kind of small, unique but drab-looking frog. But get used to these kind of frogs. There are many lineages like this. In this group, you also have Arenophrine rotonda, the rotund desert frog, and Assa darlingtoni. These also, I believe, are Australian or Southeastern Asian. You have the Crinia frogs, which have many species, and they're kind of like locusts, or their songs are very difficult to ignore. But even in these like somewhat drab species, look how unique their subtle variations are, and look how this variation in turn gives rise to an endless diversity. In this group, you also have the giant Myxophias iteratus frog, which is closely related to these Crinia frogs. These are Australian frogs, by the way. I just checked my references on the side. But this particular species somehow took this body plan and enlarged it in its own weird way to create a giant, comparatively giant body form. And it's just unique. I mean, the eyes kind of don't look right. They seem too big. The legs are extremely long. The body is very small. The body is almost smaller than the mouth, which is saying something. So a very strange angular frog. I really love this thing. Myxophias iteratus. And as you study these also in this group, you have the Australian toad frog of the deserts. Now, this is a purely burrowing frog species, and it just looks like a flabby pink McNugget baby that you would find wandering around in the desert. It's so pudgy, it doesn't even hop, it just walks about on its muscular chad legs. Myobatrachus goldii. And I can't get enough of this guy, but just look at it. Isn't he the best organism? And in this group, you also have like more quote-unquote ordinary looking frogs, such as Paracrina haswelli, seen here. It's got some bright spots underneath, and you know, when it's disturbed, it flips and kind of shocks its would-be captors, I guess. You also have the many species of the Pseudophrine genus in this family in Australia, and they are known for their bright and sometimes striking color schemes. So there they are. In this lineage, you also have a sad story. Rheobatrachus, the mouth-brooding frog, the gastric brooding frog of the Australian wilderness, and unfortunately, this species possibly is extinct now. I mean, what made them unique was that the males incubated their babies in their throat sacs, so it would seem as if it was vomiting up its little babies, but sadly, it is probably extinct today. This painting, by the way, is by Peter Schouten, who's a very well accomplished nature illustrator. He has an amazing book of contemporary extinct animals called Last Chance to See, and it's just a beautiful book. Peter Schouten, go look him up. Go look his books up. Schouten. And our poor hero Rheobatrachus, who became extinct. Press F to pay respects, everyone, while I take a sip of my hot chocolate. I gotta make a drinking game with this shit. Each time I take a sip from my hot chocolate, you take a shot. Or, you know, what would a CM Kosemen drinking game would be like? You know, what would be people's prompts to take a sip from their beer or otherwise intoxicating drinks? List them in the comments and we can all share and be happy. Anyways, moving on with the big group of Australian frogs, Myobatrachidae. You also have the Spicospina frogs, known for their flaming details in their legs and on their underbellies, basically. This photograph is by Mark Sanders, and if you flip one and down, they just look like this. And they're another one of these many obscure, somewhat little known tiny frogs that nevertheless are significant for the outlying roles they occupy in the frog family tree, basically. You also have the many species of Taudactylus frogs, which are really small. They just hang around. If you look at this guy over here, the males sometimes have these enlarged thumbs to better hug and make love to their girlfriends, and that's just Taudactylus. You also have the Euperolea frogs, which are even smaller. Like, just look at this, it's the size of a button or the size of an olive seed or something like this. But in that tiny complexity, it's a fully formed little toad-like creature, all complete with warts, warning coloration here in that little leg space, and their eyes, and they're just neat. And here's another Euperolea species, Euperolea saxatilis, and there are many species of these tiny and otherwise unimportant looking but fascinating frogs. Heck, I mean, if I was out on the field and like looking for frogs in the outback or an Australian jungle or somewhere, I would be more excited to find these frogs than I would be if I found like some flashy big frog or something. Anyways, that was the big group of Myobatrachoidea Australian frogs, and here we move on to the really big one, Hyloidea. It's so freaking big. I mean, we're gonna be spending the rest of this video in the Hyloidea group, and maybe the memory of my computer won't be enough to finish it in one go, but it's just so freaking big. Not only does it have like the proper tree frogs, it also has all the proper toads and all the rest, and it's just one big huge mess of a clade. It has been classified in several different varieties throughout the years, and I think as years move on, more attempts to classify them will be made. So, no, I have no claims for accuracy here. Probably this group will be revised or even split in the future, but I'm just trying to like review the diversity of these frogs, and I don't have any claims about the exact organization of their family trees. And if you see any mistakes in my classification schemes, if you're a real bona fide top G herpetologist, please let me know. Anyways, let's go. Now, the Hyloidea group begins with the family of Allophrenidae, which are known as Tucate Hill frogs. They're just known from these like one distinct region somewhere in South America, Allophrene, and they're just like these little spotted tree frog / toad like hybrid looking things. But of course, by now you should know that the definitions that normies use to classify frogs, like pond frog or toad or tree frog, just don't make sense anymore. I mean, the thing you call toads, they're just any kind of land living frog with the kind of warty skin, and if you call something a tree frog, it's just any kind of frog with adaptations to live on trees, and sucker feet have evolved multiple times, so they don't mean a thing. They've even been evolved and lost, as we are about to see. Anyways, then you have got the Amphignathodontidae group, which is the group containing, if I'm not mistaken, these egg-carrying frogs such as Phlectonotus pygmaeus, seen here, and these things out in the back are its eggs undergoing direct development carried by the mother. In this group, you also have the Gastrotheca frogs, represented here by Gastrotheca cornuta, which is a really like nice, fascinating looking, spiky, proper tree frog looking kind of thing. And I really like these like little spikes over the edge, the eyes, the kind of, if you notice this pupil shape found in many frogs, it's actually quite counterintuitive. It looks like a horizontal almond kind of thing. Anyways, and the legs are very long, so it's like kind of quote unquote tree frog kind of thing. And you got also Gastrotheca cornuta, seen with eggs on her back, and this just looks like a, well, if you're in the paleozoology nerd sphere, you might also liken this photograph to an anurognatid pterosaur. I mean, the rear legs of this frog look like the wings of a pterosaur, and there used to be some like quote unquote frog-mouthed pterosaurs way back in the world's past, but no, it's just a fascinating frog. And the proportions, I mean, if you take more than like 10 seconds and study the proportions of frogs, they're really strange and counterintuitive. In most cases, the shoulders begin from underneath the mouth, which is like really strange. Anyways, then you have Gastrotheca ovifera here, seen with newly hatched young. So these sacks of skin under the mother's back, they hatch out, as you can see from this fleshy thing, and little frogs come out. And they all like share a ride together, and the mother cares for them. And you know, conventional wisdom says that, you know, amphibians are cold-blooded and they don't care for their babies, and I just think that's just a bit of hogwash, just a bit of bullshit, to be honest. Because if you look at these animals, it's obvious that they have evolved a sort of maternal care independently of mammals, and obviously they have a sense of kin recognition. I dare say they even have a sense of empathy and individuality. Anyways, Gastrotheca is a big species with many fascinating, it's a big genus with many fascinating species. And this is Gastrotheca gemma from the South American forests, basically. Newly discovered species. And it just comes in this most lovely shade of yellow and green with these like brown highlights. And to make things even more fascinating, it looks like a tree frog with these big hands and sucker-tipped feet and hands, but its skin is warty like that of a toad. How strange. Anyways, then you got the little-known family called Alsodidae, represented here by Alsodes verrucosus, another group of lesser-known small frog things. Then you got Batrachileidae. Batrachus means toad. Hylia means tree frog. So it's like a kind of strange nether thing halfway between a toad and a tree frog. Obviously these distinctions are completely man-made and artificial. And this is Batrachyla antartandica, with these like amazingly long striped yellow and brown feet. How fascinating. But a slightly toad-like complexion, nevertheless. That's Batrachila taniata, another species. I mean, these guys have these like super long fingers and toes, and they all come in this kind of mallet-like. So the first joint is bent, and the other joints are straight. It's just a fascinating proportion. Like if you're a practicing artist or a paleo artist or a creature artist, one suggestion I have for you is just look at pictures of frogs, maybe even use this presentation itself, and just look at the pictures and try to draw them, and you will be surprised how many little details we take for granted. And when you draw something, you really appreciate how it looks like as the leg folds here, for example, this kind of like spiky thing comes out, so it's like an emergent feature. Just beautiful. In this group, you also have the Brachycephalidae family, which consists of these like extremely tiny golden toadlets found in the South American jungle. These are extremely small things. I mean, they're some of the smallest vertebrate animals in existence. There are many species of these, and they're all tiny. And they achieve to be so small by basically simplifying and reducing their anatomy to a drastic degree. They reduce the numbers of their toes. They reduce the number of their manual digits. Some of them have only like 1 or 2 fingers on their hands, which is saying something. They have even sacrificed their inner ear canals in order to grow small. So they don't have the kind of balancing organs that other frogs and most other vertebrates have. And I mean, in this species are some of the like most organisms ever. Just look at this. I mean, God made these guys in his image, and anything else is just an abomination. Just look at this. I mean, what on earth? Isn't he beautiful? And this thing, oh my God, so shy and introverted, like a little piece of meat or a booger. One great thing about these animals is that they have been recently, in 2022, documented to perform these very weird and kind of ungraceful leaps. Basically, in order to become so small, they have sacrificed their inner ear canals. Okay, so they can't balance themselves properly. So when they jump, they land in the most ungraceful, like they basically tumble around and they fall on their backs or maybe like crash nose first. Of course, because they're so small, it doesn't really hurt them. So the normie science press had a field day with these boys. Look how they slander my boy. Small frogs can't jump. These tiny frogs are so bad at jumping. Get fucked. Cartwheeling, crash landing frog delights the internet. And says they're not jumping around a lot. And when they do, they're probably not that worried about landing because they're doing it out of desperation. They get more benefits from being small than they lose from their inability to stick a landing. Watch! Tiny frogs can't stick the landing. Get fucked, normie media. I'd like to see you try to survive in the South American jungle, surrounded by all these snakes and centipedes and tarantulas, many times your size. And also, I think these experiments are all biased. I mean, if you look at these animals' real habitats, it's all crowded with leaf litter, sticks, like it's not a flat, experimental cocaine mirror of an unfeatured surface. In this kind of environment, they perform poorly, but if these guys jumped about in this kind of multi-dimensional place with lots of leaves and stuff, I think they would also land a graceful landing. And this normie press, I don't know how they would do. They jump like champs but can't land on their tiny feet. Get fucked. Anyways, then you got the Ischnocnema genus related to this species, and they're just like, once again, bizarre kind of these look like F-16s or something, like streamlined looking, camouflaged, strange tiny frogs. And then you got the Seutomantidae family, represented here by Seutomantis smaragdinus. Once again, not much is known about them. I mean, they breed in bromeliads and other plants. You also got a related species, Craugastor golmeri, which once again has these like long toes, but this kind of F-14 or like third generation air superiority fighter kind of profile. And this line, it's also replicated in its eye color. It's just beautiful. What a graceful animal. Another trick I have for like all you creature designer types out there following this channel, like if you want to naturalistically color an alien creature, take a screen grab of one of these frogs or related animals and then use the sampler tool to get these like muted but beautiful colors. If you look closely, this is not really orange. There's a bit of pink in it. And this is not really brown. There's a bit of green in it. And it's just beautiful. You also have many other species of Craugastor. It's a very species-rich genus. Many forms. And I guess many forms awaiting discovery too. In the Craugastoridae group, you also have Haddadus. Haddad, this like slightly larger form. Once again, rustling about in the forest floor, just living its best life. And then you got the Strabomantidae family, and represented here by Pristimantis. And this is just amazing. I mean, in Wikipedia it says with nearly 600 described species, this genus had more species than any other genus of vertebrate animals. So there are nearly 600 species of Pristimantis, and new species are being described regularly, mostly in South America. This is the most diverse group of frogs out there. And you got forms that look like glass, green glass. You got forms that mimic shit, basically. You got bright-eyed forms. You got small-eyed frogs. You got like red, green, every color under the sun. You got like chunky red boys, chunky brown boys, chocolate boys, brown mustard eye. Ooh, I mean, you just go crazy. In fact, if you look at the list of Pristimantis species in Wikipedia, motherfuckers have an alphabetical page breakdown. And there's like species upon species. I mean, look, this belongs in the same genus as this and this green thing with this like blue-eyed thing with this red-eyed thing. It's just fascinating. And this is why I believe that nature is beyond the comprehension of a single person. Heck, I mean, even frogs, I don't think any single person can study all frogs comprehensively. You have to focus in a specific genus or family, but that's the humbling genus Pristimantis for you. You also have this family called Elepterodactylidae, represented here by Physelafrin nimio. Once again, a small, little known species. Then you got Diasporus diastema, this kind of like flat little leaf frog once again. Then you got Elepterodactylus jasperi. This is like a unique frog because it gives live birth. Basically, they have, remember we saw these like back breeding frogs way back here, I believe. These guys. So not all frogs reproduce by tadpoles. Sometimes the tadpoles grow inside of mommy on their back, basically. And sometimes actually the mother frogs have evolved a sort of weird uterus-like structure, and they literally give birth to live young. And I mean, the only thing that's missing is the milk, to be honest. And maybe they do that too. I don't know. But this particular group is unique for having one of the few frogs that truly give birth after a pregnancy. So, that's another counterintuitive fact about frogs. Not all of them reproduce with tadpoles. Anyways, then again, you come to the Buffonidae subgroup of the Hyloidea megagroup. And once again, there are like entire family trees of these things. So Buffonidae is the group containing basically quote-unquote toads. They used to think that toads were an artificial grouping, but then it turned out that there's actually some sort of common ancestry to all these like toad-like frog things. But of course, as we saw before, there are also lots of warty frogs that are not inside the proper family of toads, but they have evolved those characteristics independently. Anyways, we begin I'm just going to skim through these genera. I'm going to skip a few of them too. I'm just going to skim through them, starting from the most divergent and kind of moving towards the most commonest toads, let us say. And the most ancestral toads, or the most divergent toads, probably are these guys, represented by Melanophryniscus stelzneri. These are just drama queens. They live on the forest floor in South America. They're brightly colored. Their body probably has some sort of weird toxin and these warty tubercles, and they just do their best not to get eaten. You also have the genus Atelopus, which doesn't quite look like a toad as we know it, but it's a more graceful, sleek, climbing tree frog kind of thing. They come in many different colors. Here's Atelopus seminiferus, this kind of neoprene, dark, smooth creature. You got many species of Atelopus. You got spotted ones, yellow on black, black on yellow, bicolored, and also with these red accents. They're just beautiful. You even got pink Atelopus. Here the photograph is by Chaim Culebras. And then you got another genus called Oreofrinella. These tiny, dark, they look like kind of a piece of sponge dipped in petroleum, and they're really small, really tiny. Oreofrinella, give this guy an Oreo. Goblik. All right. And you got a related genus called Ozornophryn. They are similar to Oreofrinella, but they're kind of larger and they have more distinct features in some species. Others just look like blebs and blobs, but this is also among my favorite kinds of frog out there, this kind of small, warty, and extremely cryptic. Here's another one, Ozornophryn simpsoni, in its natural habitat. And it's one thing to look at these in these isolated photographs, but it's another thing to look at them in their natural habitat. And I think no description of any reptile, amphibian, or small creature should be complete without a photograph of their surroundings, because you see the universe they inhabit. They walk around these little stems of moss, and they have a whole different worldview. And once again, you see this uniquely bizarre third joint before the foot that most frogs have. Just fascinating. Here you have Frostius, a related species. This is somewhat larger, And these guys are notable for their brightly colored red or yellow eyes. This photo is by Mauro Teixeira Jr. Thanks for basically complicitly agreeing me to use this. Just let it be known that this video and this channel, they're not monetized. Another species, Frostius pernambucensis, is known for making these like strange egg corners in basically moist holes in trees, and they have like a really complicated set of social behaviors. They have got male to male combat and male to female romance basically. And this whole genus Frostius is named after Darrell Frost, a famous American herpetologist. Maybe Mr. Frost, you are watching this video, so if you are, cheers from a big fan. Anyways, then you got other tiny frog things here in a photo reproduced by Renato Gaiga. Dendrophreniscus brevipolicatus, the tiny coin-sized forest floor toadlet basically. And not much is known about them aside from the fact that they're small and they're fascinating. Okay, moving on. Where are we now? Okay, we only come this far. So now we're gonna move on to these like bigger branches, okay? Moving on. You got like properly toad-like toad things in the Buffonidae subgroup of the Hyloidea superfamily of the Neobatrachia branch of frogs. You got Nanophrine. Nana. It just looks like a little old lady walking among the stones, chilling with these fascinating Kill Bill stripes. What an amazing creature. Then you got Peltophrine, represented here by Peltophrine lemur. But some of these toads, they're like proper toads now, they got really strange skull shapes. I mean, note how there are these like bony ridges on the skull and the eyeballs just pop out. It's just amazing. And this species, Peltophrine peltocephala, is a more like toad-like toad. I mean, look at these hypnotic eyes. Oh my God. You look at the hypnotic eyes while I drink another sip of coffee. And just think what a humbling spectrum of diversity so far. And you can also see how the kind of evolutionary scale moves from like little snot-like things to like big ass huge toads that basically eat and devour everything. And we're gonna be seeing a lot of that soon. You also got Rabo Hematiticus, another smallish toad but with more distinct toad-like features. It's got the famous poison glands that many toads have. And you got the famous big genus Rhinella. Now, if you know anything about frogs or toads, you would probably know the name Rhinella from what I'm about to show you now. But before you get there, you got these like graceful, striped, small and elegant species like Rhinella ornata, or these tiny, once again, snot or leaf mimicking forms like Rhinella margaritifera. You also have these like improper political caricatures like Rhinella lili rodriguezae with these like big noses, like little chocolate kind of, I don't know what's going on in here. And then you got the very strange Rhinella margaritifera. Oop, I think I made a typo here. So this is not Rhinella margaritifera, it's another species, but well, just chalk it up to errors. This is Rhinella margaritifera with these like enormous gremlin ear type margins on its skull. And this is just a bizarre beast. These bony flanges may even like function like true outer ears like those of mammals because they lead up to the ear hole. How strange and how bizarre. I mean, if you see them on the forest floor, there are a lot of photographs of these guys floating about on the internet, and they look like little cat things that kind of hop about towards you, like little cat gremlin witch familiar creatures. And in this group you also have, of course, the infamous Rhinella marina frogs. They're natives of India actually, but they've also been they're natives of South America, but they've been introduced to Australia where they've had an invasion. They're kind of like taking over the continent, destroying all native weird little frogs, and remember we looked at Australian weird little frogs way back. Now I'm not going to scroll back there, but now these frogs threaten them all. So they call them an invasion. They're even like these kind of Hearts of Iron or Europa Universalis type expansion maps. They're like launching campaigns. And this is from the BBC. Now predicted. Oh my God, they're going to take over the country. Oh my God. Well, okay, now invasive species are a real problem, but especially with these frogs, there's something that I just cannot agree with, which is like every Australian makes a show of like killing and butchering and destroying these animals. And I'll grant you, these are like very destructive on their native species. But if you as an individual choose to take a life, I mean, I would understand if this was like one tiny island and the destruction of one toad could make a difference. But no, you're like, these guys are loose in an entire continent. There are only 20 million people there, probably hundreds of millions of these toads. Like, when you choose to take a life, you think it's gonna do anything? I mean, I respect Australia's ecology and as much as anyone else, but by now, you can't do anything. So, I mean, if I was walking in Australia and I saw one of these guys, I just live and let live. I don't know, that's just my point. I mean, destroying invading species only works in like small scale environments, like a small island or something. So there, I would not go out of my way to breed them either, of course, but you know, life is life. What can you do? Should have thought about it before introducing them. Anyway, then moving on, you got the big genus Anaxyrus americanus, the American toads. You got Incilius coniferus, the kind of graceful green tree toad guy. You got Incilius nebulifer, which looks truly satanic in this photograph. Just look at it. What is your bidding, master? Okay, I will do exactly as you command. Okay, moving on. Where are we now? Oh, we're only here. Like, remember, this Buffonidae group is a huge ass group. Okay. Then you got like these like tiny things. Didynamipus. Once again, like reverting to this tiny form with like regressed. Like they only have 3 toes and even like 2 toes on their hands. So really strange. And also like, this is so weird. You got like another joint before your leg. What the hell? So if you look at toad evolution, you actually see like basically toads are not these like big devouring H.P. Lovecraft things, but like the OG toads are like these tiny things. And basically they have like this kind of foundation population in the world's jungles, mostly in South America. And whenever the opportunity presents itself, they migrate out of that location to create like big landforms. And this has happened over and over again. This is another like proper like big genus Sclerophrys garmani. Once again, I think these are American toads now. You also got like the big leaf mimicking rubber duck like strange Sclerophis superciliaris. Here in a photograph by Brian Feyermuth. And then you got Nimbaphyrnoides occidentalis. Once again, these are very strange because they have re-evolved this kind of internal development. So these guys don't have tadpoles. They have like genuine embryos. This is what they look like developing in the mother's womb, basically. And the mummy toads also have these like big enlarged butt area. Basically, it contains a fake uterus in which these toad babies can develop. And they really look like embryos. I mean, don't they? They're fascinating. They look like mammal embryos, to be honest. Very strange. And then, for some reason, also in this species, the males also have like a kind of fake penis-like puckering, which they use to internally fertilize their females. So they actually like put it in and out. Whereas in most other frogs, they just stay kind of glued together and they let their liquids mix in the water and the eggs get fertilized. But no, these guys like really put it all the way in, if I can say that. And it's just one of the many fascinating things about frog diversity. Then you got Capanzibufo. I think these are South African toads or toadlets. Yes, in this beautiful photograph by Tyrone Ping. Now, I've been like praising Tyrone Ping a lot in these videos, but that praise is entirely deserved, because the way he takes pictures of these animals, you see them completely at home next to the natural flora. So like any of these small animals, people breed them in like Tupperware or like these little boxes with just paper in them. But obviously these animals lead extremely enriched lives, crawling among multiple species of strange, beautifully colored plants, different kinds of substrate. And I think there's like a vast universe of amphibian experiences that we just cannot even imagine and comprehend. There's probably like one kind of plant they like to be around, or one type of substrate they just enjoy being on. And this is why I think Tyrone Ping is such a good photographer. If you see some photos by him, you don't even need to look for his signature. You would say that, aha, that's my man Tyrone there, taking pictures. Another related species, Walterstrophina kirioi. Once again, a kind of medium-grade toad kind of creature. And then you got Nectophrine afra, which is kind of like, has adaptations for like water living, or I don't know, tree jumping. I don't know, it's got these webbed feet, very strange. And also this snub nose. I think it's like a toad that's evolving gliding adaptations. I don't know, this like strange gecko-like feet. Nectophrine afra. What a strange customer. And then you got, I think these are Asian toads at this point. Schismaderma carens, this big red chimkin, fried chimkin-like toad. And just check the like cool way these warts complement the feet and kind of make it a burrowing instrument. And then you got the little known Churamiti maridadi. These are Indian frogs, and these are African frogs, and only 4 specimens are known. And the name comes from Swahili words that mean beautiful tree toad. All right. In this group, you also have the very strange Nectophrinoides viviparus. And these guys have like these balloon-like warts on their legs, necks, and forelegs. Basically, they kind of like, they look like they have some allergy or something, but no, it's just the way their bodies are. Another species has like smaller warts. I don't know what species this is, but this is a mummy, and this is a baby. These also like give birth to live young, I believe. Then you got Pedostibes tuberculosus, another long-legged form that still nevertheless retains toad-like features. And then you got Adenomus candianus from India. So they somehow rediscovered this frog 135 years after it was first described and declared to be extinct. I think this is from Sri Lanka, to be honest, if it's from Kandy. Then you got this little-known genus Xanthophrine tigerina, the medium tubercled kind of striped toad customer. And then you got the giant Indian toad, Duttaphrinus melanosticus. But you see, like, these big toads evolved from like smaller things like these, whereas the big toads in Australia, if you go way back, the Rhinella toads, they evolved from like these like strange little. So like you see this pattern in toad evolution, that these small forms keep giving rise to big forms that are actually unrelated, but they're still kind of related because they are all ancestrally related to these tiny things. So this is one reason I enjoy cladistics so much. And you got these guys, the Eurasian green toad, Buphotes viridis. They used to call them Pseudelpidea viridis, and before that they called them Bufo viridis. They are like the Eurasian green toad. And these guys lived around my childhood home in Istanbul. Like, it was just a normal suburb of Istanbul. But even in that urban habitat, there used to be these puddles and ponds among apartments, and they used to breed in them. And every summer night, their songs would be like, I can't even like, so like a higher pitched version of this, and it was so I'm tearing up as I remember, because then these toads got extinct in our neighborhood. They're still pretty common in our part of the world, in Turkey, Greece, Balkans, but unfortunately they used to live in like urban Istanbul, but now they have disappeared. So sad. Then you got the mainland European toad, Epidalea calamita. It's just a toad. But you know this now. You know the story of toad evolution. You can appreciate how fascinating these creatures are. These guys are probably, they somehow evolved in India first and then migrated to Eurasia through what is now Iran and Central Asia. I don't know. Then you got Bufo, and then you got Bufo japanicus, the Japanese toad. So there seems to be this like big Asian radiation of toads, starting maybe from India, and they reached to Japan, and they reached Europe and all other parts of the old world. And this Japanese toad is just like a Studio Ghibli character. Look, it's even wearing a kimono in these patterns, and it's just a beautiful creature. Anyways, my throat. Okay, we crawled up to here, so let's power through. Then you got forms like Leptophrin, and this is an Indonesian species. So these are more tropically adapted, long-legged toad guys. Basically, they kind of like the toad chassis fitted for like jungle warfare. And then you got a related species, Sabaphrinus maculatus, once again from, I think, Indonesia. And it's like a smaller version. Just look at it. I mean, how flexible is this form? And then you got Ansonia, which are kind of like, once again, longer legged, but still like versatile, small species. Here's another species, Ansonia leptopus. And then you got Ingerophrinus parvus, another small kind of drab toad-like thing that lives in jungles. And then you got Rentapia, which is a fascinating sucker toad, basically. In this species, the female is very brightly colored with this like blue with yellow spots, and the male is drab. Now this is very counterintuitive, because in nature it's usually the males who have the zoot suits on, and the females are basically camouflaged and drabbed because they need to keep safe. But here's a reversal. I don't know why this evolved. Anyways, toads are also known for bufotoxins, the little white substance that comes out of their skin. And you know, in the 1990s there used to be these toad licking crazes where people in the States would lick toads and try to get high. But in fact, they have like these like serious side effects, ranging from irritation to salivation, ataxia and walking in circles, depression, weakness, abnormalities of the cardiac rhythm, convulsions, and in the severe cases you could die. Heck, I remember like in summer holidays we used to go to this certain place, and next door there was like a guy with a house, and this guy was like a cranky character. You know, he was an alcoholic, and he had this like really loud and aggressive dog. I think he beat the dog, to be honest. Okay, one day the dog's name I don't remember, was like Count or something like that. So one day, like, I like animals, but this Count was a really aggressive dog. And one day they found Count the dog like convulsing and like shivering and like whimpering, and then, you know, it suffered horribly and died. When it died, it vomited a dead toad. It vomited one of these guys, actually, the good old Buphotes viridis. Now, it's obvious that the frog had kind of gotten lodged in his throat, but the frog was also dead. But in its dying throes, the frog had unloaded all of its venom, probably, and Count, the aggressive attack dog belonging to this sad drunk guy, met his maker by basically picking a fight with the wrong anuran. Okay, now that's that for part 2, because Hyloidae is a big ass group, And we've come to the end of the Buffonidae group. In the next video, we will be studying Centrolenidae and all of the many other groups in the Hyloidea big group. So thanks for staying with me so far. Please consider supporting me on patreon.com/cmkosemen. The link is in the video description. And don't go anywhere. We'll see you in part 3.